Tell me about her, Eileen said. I'm curious. She's beautiful like you. Sonny Corleone put his hat on the back of Eileen's head, and it flopped down over her ears. Only your skin's darker, like Italians, savages. Eileen took off the hat and held it to her chest. Dark hair, dark eyes, fierce tits, she said. Yeah, Sonny said, that's it. You fooled around with her yet? Nah, Sonny answered, as if shocked. She's a good Italian girl. I'm not getting to first base until she sees the engagement ring. Eileen laughed. She tossed the hat back into Sonny's lap. Good thing you got your Irish whore to bed then. Come on, Eileen, it's not like that. Sure it is, Sonny. She got up and went to the door. Listen to me, she said, her hand on the doorknob. You should marry your Sandrinella and knock her up right away so she can have a dozen kids while she's still young. You Italians like your big families. Look who's talking, Sonny said. He joined her at the door. You Irish, your families are so big sometimes I think you're all related to each other. Eileen smiled, conceding the point. Still, she said, I think we should stop seeing each other. She stepped into Sonny's body, gave him a hug and a kiss. Sooner or later someone's going to find out, and then they'll be held to pay. Better we end it cleanly and efficiently now. I don't believe you. Sonny reached over her shoulder and closed the door all the way. Well, believe me, Eileen said, curt and unyielding. I always said this was nothing but a fling. She opened the door and then stepped back and held it for Sonny, waiting for him to leave. Sonny leaned toward Eileen as if he might smack her, and then instead grabbed the door out of her hand and slammed it closed behind him. On the steps down on his way out to the street, he threw a quick short jab at the wall, and plaster caved in under the wallpaper. He could still hear pieces of it tumbling down through the walls to the basement as the front door closed behind him. Carmela moved back and forth from the stove to the sink, banging pots and pans as she went about preparing for an eggplant for dinner. Behind her, Clemenza bounced Connie on his knee at the kitchen table, with Tessio and Genco sat alongside him in a row, listening to Michael haltingly tell them about the school report that he was preparing on Congress. Frito, near tears, had just left the house saying he was going over to a friend's. Upstairs, Tom was in the study with Vito, and for the past half hour everyone had been trying not to listen in on the occasional bouts of shouting and banging that issued through the study door and made their way down to the kitchen. Vito was not a man to lose his temper. He was not a man to shout at his children, certainly not to shout profanities, and so the whole household was tense and edgy over the shouting and cursing coming out of the study. There's 48 states, Michael said, and 96 men represent their constituents as senators. Clemenza said to Connie, He means to represent whoever's paying them off? Michael looked out the kitchen doorway and up to the ceiling as if he might be able to see through the floor and into the study, where it had been quiet for the past several minutes. He tugged at his shirt collar, and ran his hand over his neck as if the collar was bothering him. What do you mean? He asked, turning back to Clemenza. What do you mean, who's paying them off? Genco said, Don't listen to them, Michael. Carmela, at the kitchen counter with a chef's knife in her hand, said, Clemenza, ominously without looking away from the fat eggplant on the cutting board. I didn't mean nothing, Clemenza said, ticking Connie, making her wriggle and squirm in his lap. Connie threw out her torso over the table toward Michael. I can name the states, she said, and she launched into a recital. Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Stazit, Carmela said. Not now, Connie. She brought the cutting knife down and began slicing up the eggplant as if it was a hunk of raw meat, and the chef's knife was a cleaver. Upstairs, the study door opened. Everyone in the kitchen first turned to look toward the stairs, and then, catching themselves, went back to what they were doing. Carmela went back to slicing the eggplant. Clemenza went back to tickling Connie, and Michael looked at Genco and Tessio and started reciting facts about the House of Representatives. When Tom came into the kitchen, his face was pale and his eyes puffy. He gestured toward Genco and said, Pops wants to see you. Tessio said, Genco or all of us? All of you, Tom said. Connie, who ordinarily would have leapt up on Tom at the sight of him, instead went around the table and stood next to Michael when Clemenza put her down. She was wearing shiny black shoes with white socks and a pink dress. Michael picked her up and held her on his lap, and they both stared at Tom in silence. Tom said, Mama, I've got to go. Carmela pointed to the table with the chef's knife. Stay for dinner. I'm making eggplant the way you like it. I can't, Mama. Carmela said, raising her voice. You can't stay. You can't stay and have dinner with your family. I can't, Tom said, louder than he had intended. First he looked like he might try to explain or apologize, then he left the kitchen and started for the front door. Carmela pointed to Michael. Take Connie up to her room and read her a book. Her tone of voice made it clear that neither Michael nor Connie had any choice in the matter. In the living room, Carmela caught Tom at the door as he was putting on his jacket. I'm sorry, Mama, he said, and he swiped at his eyes, which were damp with tears. Tom, she said, Vito told me what happened. He told you? What? Carmela said. You think a man doesn't talk to his wife? You think Vito doesn't tell me? He tells you what he wants to tell you, Tom said, and as soon as he said it, he saw the anger in Carmela's face and apologized. I'm sorry, Mama, he said. I'm upset. You're upset, Carmela repeated. I'm ashamed, Tom added. You should be. I behaved badly. I won't do it again. Some Irish girl, Carmela said and shook her head. Mama, Tom said, I'm part Irish. That don't matter, Carmela said. You should know better. See, Tom said, me dispiace. Dispiace, I don't know. He hooked the zipper on his jacket. The kids don't know anything, he said, as if he knew, of course, they wouldn't know, but was asking anyway. Carmela made a face as if to say the question was silly and the kids didn't know anything. She stepped closer to him and held his cheeks in her hands. Tommy, she said, you're a man. You have to struggle against your nature. Are you going to church? Do you say your prayers? Sure, Mama, Tom said. Sure. Which church? Carmela shot back, and when Tom couldn't come up with an answer, she sighed dramatically. Men, she said. You're all the same. Mama, listen, Pop says if anything like this happens again, I'm on my own. So, don't let it happen again, Carmela said harshly. Then she softened a little and added, Pray, Tommy. Pray to Jesus. Believe me, she said. You're a man now. You need all the help you can get. Tom kissed Carmela on the cheek and said, I'll be here for Sunday dinner. Sure you'll be here for Sunday dinner, Carmela said, as if that was always understood. Be a good boy, she said. She opened the door for him and then patted him affectionately on the arm as he left.